Okay, Anna, thank you so much for joining us on the Right Opinion podcast. I'm very happy to have you as a guest.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much.
For those of you that don't know, Anna has an amazing YouTube channel with super helpful tips on being a writer and the coziest vlogs. And I personally think she's got the
Oh,
cozy
that's so
writer
sweet.
aesthetic down to a T. So I
Oh,
recommend definitely checking out her YouTube channel, and she's got a lot of great stuff on there. And so since we're on that, I wanted to ask you, like, what got you into, YouTubing about your writer journey? And I know you made the switch from some other content, so I'd love to hear more about how that's been going for you and how that all happened.
oh, awesome. Yeah, so I, I've had a lot of writers. They've started writing since they were like so little, like 5, like as soon as they can start talking. And I'm like, that's not me because I started to write more so like grade 8, 8th grade, 7th grade. And that was more so when I was a teenager. And I think I started to write basically when I was so bored of the world and like day to day things that I wanted to escape. And that's also when I started to read as well. So reading and writing sort of came and like, yeah, coexisted at the same time. But in regards to, yeah, my content creation, I've definitely changed quite a lot. I used to do rainbow loom videos, and I'm not sure if a lot of people remember that, but I loved it. It was so, so fun. But yeah, it started to get a little bit boring for me. And then I started to, yeah, write a bit more. And I'm like, you know what? I want to change my content and, yeah, see where that leads me. Because I think there's such an amazing thing and like amazing like community on like Writertube. And I really wanted to see if I can fit in. I was definitely like very nervous about it since I was also a new writer. I hadn't been writing for a long time, and like I don't know, me talking about my advice or like my progress seemed a little bit scary to me. But I'm so glad that I have, made that decision and I was able to create my channel and kind of change it to something that really reflects me right now. So yeah, I guess that's kind of like my journey.
Oh, and it's amazing because you're only 18, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Only
No,
18. I
you're
feel old.
you're younger than I am, so you should not feel old. uh,
There are people who say that they're like, "Wow, you're so young," but I'm like, "No, I have back pain. I like have take naps. I feel so old." Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like that's part
Mm.
of that writerly soul. Is I feel that most of us are just
Honestly.
in like hoarding some sort of mentality of like we're actually really old, like we're talking about
Mm.
all these like problems
Yeah.
in our writing, and we're just like overthinking everything, that it's just kind of like this is not what most young people are thinking about. Like I just have to create a
I
whole
know.
entire world out of scratch.
I know, because I like the phrase that's like an old soul in a young body. And I feel like, yeah, that embodies all writers. We're just old souls. I think it's cool. But yeah.
Absolutely, I
Mm.
totally agree with it. So, are you looking to publish in the future? I know you've got like you're like me, you've got like 7 projects going on, something like that. And
I know. Crazy. Crazy.
but are you looking to publish in the future?
Yeah.
And if you are you thinking traditional, indie, hybrid? Any thoughts on that?
I honestly like when someone, I think I sometimes get comments on that, like, oh, where can I read your writing? Are you ever going to publish? And I've been thinking, like, I never really thought about that. And it's weird because, like, yeah, I would like to be a writer, but like publishing books and like doing the brand deals and doing everything like that didn't really, like, I don't know, it's not something I was really thinking about. And when someone did ask me, like in my comments, like when you just asked me now, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't think it really matters if I ever publish a book or if I do. I think just right now, I love writing so much that, I would like to definitely publish, I guess, to kind of share my words with the world, but also just writing for myself is enough. And I don't know, I would like to maybe publish if you were to ask, like, seriously, like a career sort of question. But right now, like, I literally don't care if I never publish a book or if I do. Like if it happens, it happens. But it depends. Like I guess a lot of writers also get self-doubt and like, wow, like would anyone actually like to write and like read my stuff? And yeah, sometimes that happens to me and I get like a little bit self doubting and yeah, self-critical, but I think that's all writers. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, like I'd like to publish if people want to read my stuff, but right now I don't really mind. I mean, I'm definitely far off. That's for sure. I write a lot of books, but like where they are at are not near like querying or anything, and just hearing about like the whole process of like sending emails and like that sort of like that stresses me out. I'm just like, I just want to write. Like I just want to continue writing books and putting them on the shelf and just like, yeah. But I don't know, I'd like to try, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So
I
that's
definitely
my answer.
sympathize.
Very weird
I, s-
answer. Yeah.
I empathize with the idea of like, I just want to write books and have people read them. Like, I don't really want to do the the whole Instagram, social
Yeah,
media.
yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh my god, I
Mm-mm.
writing is like enough of a mentally exhausting
True.
task, and now you're like
So true.
doing TikTok videos on top of it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know
Mm-mm.
why I have to do this. But I think you've
No.
managed to do a really good thing with your YouTube channel in the sense that you're building up a following, which I guess a lot of traditional publishers
Oh,
are looking
cool.
for now too, is they want people to have, that's what I've been hearing, is like they want people to have a following and have this audience of people who would buy the book. And you've definitely got that. I read your comments too, and everybody is in love with your projects and what you're doing. So I think if you were
Oh,
to pursue publishing, you already have a bit of a base that you've built that's going to keep growing the more you keep working with your YouTube channel. So
oh,
I think you're headed in a good direction.
nice. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's really flattering. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. But I don't know. Like, I feel like also I share so much of my projects and like what's happening in my chapters and my characters. And I feel like a lot of author tubers, they like to keep it secret. Like, I don't know. I don't understand, like, why. Like, wouldn't you just want to talk about your project? Like, talk about the nitty gritty details. And I guess people are scared about, yeah, people stealing their work or like gaining ideas. But like, that's the whole point. I want people to gain ideas from my books. And I think me also just talking about my books, what's happening, like especially my vlogs, I'm just like, oh, I'm reading, like I'm writing this scene, so exciting, blah blah blah. And that is almost like telling my story without it having to be published, if that makes sense. And then I think like, oh, I may as well just publish my book if I've already told everyone everything. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, that's just how I feel. Mm.
That's a good point too. With like, I guess with traditional publishing, they can be a bit more picky with that. Of like, oh, you've already shared these details, which is the nice thing about self-publishing is that at least
Mm.
you can do whatever you want with
Mm-mm.
self. And I
I
still
see. I
think like
see.
I love listening about your projects. Honestly, they're some of my favorite types of videos,
Mm.
but we still don't know like the
You're so sweet.
details. Yeah, like we don't know everything that's going to
Yeah,
happen
for
from
sure.
beginning to end. We don't know the nitty gritty, like you
Yeah,
said.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many more things that go into writing,
Mm.
a novel. Like
For
you
sure.
could kind
Yeah.
of do that with every book. Like it's like describe like a movie scene badly or like a movie badly. You could do that with books. It's just like Harry Potter. It's just like orphan boy becomes a wizard and fights a bad guy. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
technically that's what the book's about, but it gives you nothing really to go off of. You have to actually read the book to really get the
Exactly. I see. I see.
full kind of
Yeah, yeah.
uh journey of what that is. So I think it would be the same thing with the novels.
Mm.
Like you're giving us a lot of like information and insight into your projects, but even from you making that video to turning it into like the final version,
Yeah,
it's
I
gonna
know it's a big
change,
jump.
I'm
Yeah, for
assuming.
sure.
Yeah. So I feel like, yeah, you're doing everything right, honestly. Like I love that you do that, because sometimes I'll watch other videos and like there's so many great author tubers, but
Mm.
it's just like a vlog and it'll be like, this is what I ate and then I wrote and then I went for a walk, and I'm like, this is nice, but I'm just like it's sometimes it's hard to
Yeah, you want to
differentiate
hear
from.
ideas.
Yeah, and I'm like, well,
Yeah,
beauty vloggers kind
true.
of do the same thing, or I'm super into like self-development, so it's just like if they do a day in the life, it's like, if you want to talk about your work and what you're doing, if you're kind of not doing that, it's
Mm.
you don't stand out as much. So that's one thing I really do like about you as
Yeah.
a YouTuber.
Oh, you're so sweet, man. Oh my gosh, thank you.
No, honestly, just a lot of love from
Sorry,
my
I get
end.
like literally when people tell me how much. So sweet. Thanks. Yeah.
And then, so you're saying writing kind of, it's not maybe top of your list. And I know you're in law school right now. So I'm guessing that's more kind of where you're thinking of career goals in the future is you want to be a lawyer, I'm guessing?
Mm. No, I don't want to be a lawyer at all, actually. Obviously, my dream is to become a writer. Um, I would have loved to study like an arts degree in like creative writing because imagine doing your assignments and you can like write a book for your assignment. Like that wouldn't even be work to me because obviously I write as a hobby. So it'd just like be my doing my hobby full time. But then when you kind of look at the back of that, yeah, I think when writing becomes your career and if it becomes your career, you're gonna have a different dynamic with it, even though it is an art. And I think that's something a lot of artists struggle with. But no, I don't really want to become a lawyer. No, thank you.
So what prompted law school then?
um, well, yeah, it's a little bit hard because I guess I'm into modern history and like those sorts of things. I did modern history in school, but I think a lot of parent influence, they really wanted me to do law, um, which is fine. And like I know that they need like the best for me, and I think law was probably the most suited thing. That's kind of like a safety net for me, because my mom's like, you don't need a degree to write a book, and like I guess you don't, but still it'll be so cool to learn. But I guess that's why I like to do my own little research and like something like on the side. So really, yeah, law school isn't too up on my priorities, really. It's like literally YouTube and writing, and then like law school, which shouldn't be the case. I'm such a bad, such a bad role model. I'm like, yeah, uni student, but I'm like, uni, yeah, it's fine, it's okay. Like I'm passing. I mean, I hope I'll pass. Don't worry. But I do the work, and then I just come home and do my writing, and yeah, it's just like an exchange. But yeah, I'm actually studying like a double degree, so it is law and international relations and government, which is also very interesting. I think mostly I guess in terms of career, is to become like to go into diplomacy in government is probably something I'd rather definitely than becoming a lawyer, and I think law would help with that. So it's basically very suited, I guess, to IR and yeah, sort of international politics and stuff like that. So I'm interested in that as well. But since my degree is like 5.5 years, I'm gonna be like 50 by the time it feels like I'm gonna be so old by the time I graduate. But it's almost like I have that time to like work hard on my books and my YouTube channel to see how I come out when I graduate. And if I don't succeed, if I don't write a book, if I don't get published, if I don't, you know, get a good YouTube, I don't know, whatever happens, then I'll have a safety net to, be admitted to court, to be a lawyer, or to go into government, which is cool. But I guess my dream is to, yeah, become a writer and be a content creator. So, yeah, I guess yeah, it's interesting because people are like, oh, you're studying law. You want to be a lawyer? I'm like, no, I don't want to become a lawyer. But it's a good safety net. I mean, it's interesting. I like it. It's fun. It's just like going to school you know, I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's my feelings on law. Yeah. Very cool.
I totally understand. I also went to university. A big portion of it was due to parental pressure. I did a degree I liked, but I'm not doing anything with it
Okay.
currently and
What
just
did you study?
writing. What did I study?
I see. Mm-mm.
I did neuroscience and a minor in philosophy, which I love
Neuroscience.
neuroscience. Yeah. I just
That's
slide it
amazing.
into my books though, rather than actually like working in a lab or something like I did. I'm like, oh, this
I
really
see.
cool neuroscience experiment that I learned about in human neuropsych. I'm just like, let me just toss that in this book
Mm.
right here in this one scenario. And so that's how I
Oh,
utilize my neuroscience degree at the moment. So
oh my gosh. Slay, honestly, that's a great way to use your degree
yeah, so
for sure.
I think so, because I mean, I have some family too that was like, oh, Tiana, you need to get a job, like anybody can write a book, it's super easy. And then I was
Mm.
just thinking to myself, like, well, if it's so easy, why didn't you do it then? Like, I don't, you have no books
Yeah.
written, how do you know it's so easy? So
Mm.
but I think you've got a good point there. I had another guest who also kind of mentioned the same thing when they were trying to get into writing full time. They mentioned how they were going to spend like the next 5 years as their boss was retiring to her name is Petey
Mm.
Workman, by the way, the author. Her boss was retiring, and so her job was kind of going to end. She wasn't going to have a job anymore, I guess. And so she was like, okay, I'm going to give myself these next 5 years to figure out writing. Do I really want to do this? Can I make any money off of it? And that way, when her boss was ready to retire, she'd already have figured out the whole writing career. And it's basically what she did. And then she just transitioned into writing full time after she was done at her other job. She even helped her boss write a couple of books after that as well. So it's definitely
Wow.
possible to, finish school, keep doing this on the
Yeah.
side, and then in 5 years, you're growing a lot. And I think you definitely have the potential for in 5 years, 6 years, when this is all done, to like
Oh,
actually
thank you.
maybe really be doing this full time. And I hope that happens for you.
Oh, so cool. Mm.
I wanted to ask, I know you're sharing a bit more on your channel about, your life outside of writing, and you've mentioned your faith a few times. And, someone who's also a Christian, I just wanted to hear more about that. Like, how does your faith impact your writing? And, does that play any sort of role in what you write about? And just, how do you merge those two together, and how do they play along with each other?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I definitely wish I shared more of my faith on my channel. But I definitely have a lot of feelings about, yeah, how my faith comes into play with how I write books and what sort of books I write. Um, it's interesting. I do think about it and I do pray about it. Just to, yeah, understand because of, the Bible is very much a big influence. It's like the book of history, at least I feel, and it's interesting how Jesus like tells stories and how God uses the Bible through writing to, yeah, tell scripture and to be, yeah, just be, I don't know, like, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain and put into words. I've always kind of thought about, and I guess also prayed about the sort of juxtaposition between my faith and like sort of sinister like fantasy elements, especially when I was a big reader. I mean, I still read books, but sometimes I'll get like into dark stuff, even though I know it's fake. I obviously love also like movies, and those sorts of things do have like sinister sort of bad elements. And I guess God like tries to tell me like, Anna, maybe you should like fix your eyes on nicer things, better things. But like I know it's fake, and I know it's not. It's so I get it. I get it so tricky, and that's why I'm still kind of trying to understand it. It's interesting. I definitely think. Sorry, I'm like all over the place, but it is hard to say because it's hard to see how it fits in, and it should fit in so well, right? It should be easy. But I think God's trying to still tell me about how I can, show His love and His sort of character through my books and through my characters. And I just think I'm like on the road to get there. I think first He's just trying to get me into writing to know that I can write, which sometimes is hard to believe sometimes. But yeah, I definitely it's a hard question to answer because I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. That's so hard. Still figuring it out, I think. Probably. But I would like to hear your thoughts. I didn't know you're a Christian. That's so exciting. I didn't know that. Woo. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm Christian Orthodox, specifically
Mm.
because I'm Serbian actually, so the majority of people here are Orthodox, and
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel some of the same struggles because I also kind of write about some dark stuff, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking to myself like, I know that this isn't holy. I know that
Mm.
it's not godlike
Yeah.
behavior, and
Mm-hmm.
at first it was kind of like, no, it's totally fine, like it's just fiction. But then
Mm-mm.
I've also been praying like for my writing too, and figuring out exactly what I should be doing and where I should be, what direction I should be headed in. And
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize that maybe potentially what some of my writing is kind of a way of showing, like, I guess with some of my characters it's like what happens maybe when we live without God, but without explicitly saying so. Like, it's not the message isn't, oh
Yeah.
yeah, if you don't believe in God, this is what you're going to end up as. Not at all.
Mm-mm.
But it's more just, I guess I'm finding ways to bring in those elements, like you said, of kind of like of what God said and Jesus said, and how I can bring to life some of the ways that he said we should act. And if we kind of avoid that moral compass, or we just kind of throw it out the
Yeah.
window, it's just like things can
Yeah,
take a
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
dark turn. But
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely still trying to figure it out because I have these ideas, and I know I could write like clean Christian fiction. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that, absolutely not. I think
Oh,
if
yeah. Yeah.
that's what you're into, go full steam ahead. But mine tends to be, and it's so I have like some things too with like I guess with Serbian history and stuff, because our history is very intertwined with our religion, with
Mm.
orthodoxy. And so I
Mm.
have ideas on, that's where I kind of get some inspiration as well, as like taking elements from our history and from our interaction with other ethnic groups, and creating ideas that kind of it's like this fight to preserve our religion. And then I kind of have ideas of putting that into fictional works as well. So it's
Mm.
kind of
Mm.
also this like struggle to preserve our faith, but then also, again, because we're not perfect beings, then my characters also
Yeah.
make mistakes, and they're
Yeah.
commit
True, true,
huge
true.
sins. So I'm
Mm.
definitely trying to figure out the balance. I don't think I've also figured it out entirely, but I think also as we develop as writers, we're gonna develop as writers and develop our relationship with God. It's gonna become even more
Yeah,
clear on how we can do that. I hope, anyway.
for sure. Man, your answer was so good. Like, it reminded me of like a video essay. Like, you're like, boom, 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 boom. So good. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think I was trying to think about like my books, and like, surely somewhere there's like, yeah, a representation. I guess I don't know if you know Project BB, the Blackbirds project. One of the
Of course,
main
yeah.
things, and I was just thinking is, oh, you know about it. Oh, thank you. But yeah, I think like at the end, oh, I don't want to. I will spoil the ending, but there's elements of like the greatest commandment about like laying your life down for your friends. Um, and I think it's interesting how like it's also the same way you get ideas for your book. You don't know where it comes from until you kind of look back and like retrace your steps and go like, oh, that's where that influenced that, and that's where I got that from. And I think that was me just kind of retracing, be like, oh, okay. I think that definitely had an influence on the way the book is going, and what happens at the end, I guess, and like how that ties into the beginning of the book especially. And it's obviously hard without context, but I think self-reflection and prayer through writing a book is something I should do more. And yeah, kind of keep a conscious sort of idea of what God wants to do with my story. Because in the end, stories is something that you can represent things and things that you believe in, and I think I would love to represent my faith, just like you, and I think that's a great thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I think we can also, show our faith in everything that we do, like God wants us to, and it
Yeah.
doesn't also have to be kind of in the way. Like, I guess when people think of evangelicalism, which is also very different from orthodoxy. So when I see evangelicalism, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on right there, because it's so different. But I know for us, it's very much just like you embody the life of Christ. You try to do exactly what he did. And I guess, that kind of seeps into my writing as well a little bit. I mean, obviously sinful characters who have a lot of flaws, but there's this underlying message to kind of, someone looks deep enough into it, they'll be like, man, maybe we need a bit more God in our lives. I don't know. We'll see if that's how it ends up being or not.
Yeah. And I think, like, as a Christian, you reading books, you can see those sorts of things. And, like, for example, C.S. Lewis and, like, his works, amazing. Like, the Narnia Chronicles, that's what I fed off that. Like, that was my childhood, and I love his books, and he's definitely something, an author I definitely look up to, with creating fiction through representing, faith and God's life and Jesus and his death and resurrection. And I think that's awesome. And I'm like, damn, I really need to understand how I can truly find that as like the center, and like make that the center and the core of my books in each in like one of them, which is interesting. But I think, it really depends on the story and where you are with your faith, and like when you write the book, because a lot of people write books, if their faith is rocky at the moment. And it's difficult because, you'll always come back to what the core meaning of the book is and what is actually being said. And I think, it's so great that you put it up, because I think that I should tell myself to be more conscious of my faith in my writing, because I definitely thought they were a bit separate, and I was struggling finding the correlation between the two and how they can be brought together. But oh, that's awesome. Thanks for reminding me. That's great. I was like, I need the reminder. Wow. See, that's God. That's God right there telling you to tell me.
I
Wow.
I was literally gonna say, I was like, I don't know. I guess God is trying. I think he's sending me a message too, because I'm like thinking about my own books right now, and I'm like, I don't like. It's a struggle though. It's like still trying to figure it out. Like
It is. It is a struggle.
it's the challenge that God has given us to figure it out, like to be good writers and show Christ. He's given us that challenge, and we just have to rise up to it.
Yes. Well, we can do it.
For sure, I agree. Another thing that you've mentioned on your YouTube channel, which also struck a chord with me, was you mentioned like loneliness a little bit, and like this, how like it is lonely being a writer, especially when no one around you is doing it. They don't get it, if they think that it's a stupid thing to do. So that struck a chord with me, because I was like, I'm in the same place. Literally no one is writing, no one really cares. I've sent like my prologue to a couple of friends and they're like, oh, we want to read it, and then I send it to them and they never read it, and I'm like, okay, thoughts, guys?
I know.
Anything? And
it's
they're like,
do you even care?
I know. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll read it later, I promise. And then you're like, okay, well, I just poured my heart and soul into this, but it's totally fine. So I'm just, what are your thoughts on that? How can we combat?
Wow. I definitely remember the videos like I kind of talk about. Yeah, loneliness as a writer is so real, and I think recognizing that is very sad and depressing sometimes, because it really depends on, I guess, who you know and what, you know. For example, I work at a bookstore, and one of my coworkers, he is a writer, and I'm just like, wow, like you have so many writing friends, because he was talking about, you know, him meeting up with his friends and doing writing at like cafes. I'm like, how do you find those people? And he's like, I don't know, I guess I did like a, you know, English degree. And I'm like, "Ah, that's so great. I want that. But of course I'm not doing an English degree. So like, how am I going to find writers? And all my friends don't write. I don't have any family members that write or who are writers or even like thought about writing a book. And it's definitely really hard. Loneliness, writing, and I don't know, it's difficult to come to terms with, because you're just, but then again, I was just thinking about like characters. That's so sad. I don't know. Characters for me are my friends who write. I think also I'm reading a book called The Linchpin Writer. And I think it's so great hearing people's perspectives as writers and just how you as a writer get other writers. And I think that's so comforting, because of course when you talk to your friends, like, yeah, can you read my book? And they get so excited about it, but you can't really talk to them about the whole writing experience and the struggles that come with it. And I think reading people's works who are writers, or like talking to you, for example, who is a writer as well, there's something so comforting about it. And like the only sort of example I can kind of make, it's like a universal feeling. Like, for example, I went to like a Christian camp just recently, and just being there with other Christians felt so at home. And I'm just like, wow, this is where I belong. The same way you're with writers, and it's just a feeling. You just like, you're like, I don't know, it's something like when I watch other writertubers, I'm like, they get me. They're so cool. And it's just like, if I had someone physical who can come to me to write, you know, at cafes and have a little cute like late night writing sprints, like that would be amazing. But of course, I don't know if it's so terrible, because everyone, surely there's people who write around you, but it's just so hard to find them, because writers are all writers are all introverts. Am I right? Like, I feel like every single writer is not an extrovert, and I think that's even more difficult when we do get lonely and when we are just in our room after school writing our little stories, and yeah, we have no one to talk to about it. And then I'm sure you can relate, but when you when you like go to your siblings, go to your friends, and you're explaining your new story idea or like what's happening in your book, and you can just see them like starting to wander off and like look around, and like you feel so terrible, because you're like, I'm so sorry, it's not their fault for not being interested, it's just you rambling on about your book because you're so excited about it. But it's definitely hard. I feel like when I hear other writers' ideas, I go crazy. And I think that's just the writer in everybody. But yeah, loneliness is a thing, and I feel like everyone should. Yeah, I don't know how to combat it. I know you said like, how can we combat it? But I don't know yet, and I think maybe online connections. At least that's what I'm seeking right now. And of course, I'm getting it from a lot of beautiful people around the world, and also like you. And it does give me hope, I think. So yeah, hard question. Hmm.
I feel the same way, because there, yeah,
Mm.
no writers around, and like I'm trying to find them. And thankfully people are going online, and like, you know, your channel and a lot of other channels, so it's easier to create that community around you, that it's like, oh, at least I can, you know, watch
Yeah.
this person's YouTube video and they're struggling through NaNoWriMo like I am or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely not the kind of activity like a dance class where you
Yes.
go and there's 10 of you in a
Mm.
dance class, or you go to a concert and there's 1,000 people there. That's a really small concert, but you know, everybody's there because they love the same band, or you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a very isolating hobby, which is, I mean, and it needs to be, because like you need time to think about and do your own thing, but
That's
also
very
it's
true.
like
Yeah.
so isolating that you just end up removing yourself kind of from the outside world, both physically and then mentally when you're writing.
Yes.
And I wish for the same
Yes.
thing. I'm like, I just want to go to a cute coffee shop with like a friend or two and gush about writing, do some writing
Wow.
sprints, and then like
I
that's like the
know.
dream right now.
Dream. Wow. Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. It's so sad. But people, I don't know. I really don't know how to combat it. Like, it is definitely a lonely art, as you said. And sometimes you can't help but, yeah, long for someone who will get you. And it's hard because I guess physically writing with someone and talking to someone in person just it beats every other sort of communication you can have with anyone and any writer. Um, yeah, I don't really know what else to say, but I just hope people find writing friends eventually. But I don't know. Do you think writing? I feel like there's more young writers these days, but I could be wrong. Or at least like, is there more writers than there were back then? And is there maybe like a disconnection with, yeah, the role of like media, for example? And like that we're just not finding people who write, or maybe I don't know, writing as a hobby is so hard to come by and it has decreased over time. I actually don't know, but I honestly think like if you ask someone or if you hear someone hears you're a writer, they're like, oh my gosh, you write books, that's so cool. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they seem to like have never heard of that sort of hobby. They're like, oh, what the heck? Even like reading, I guess it's more popular now, but reading, like, I don't know, could be very similar. But I don't know. What are your feelings on that? Do you think it's increased, decreased?
I would love to see some statistics somewhere, which maybe exist, maybe not. But I
Mm-hmm.
I think social media has helped to showcase
Yeah.
just everything in general, and I think with stuff like content creation becoming more common and more young people now wanting to have careers
Yeah.
like be a YouTube creator, we are getting
Yep.
more young people to showcase what they're doing, and it helps that when you have
Mm.
somebody start a community that more people want to join it. So I feel like we're kind of seeing that in the Writertube community, is that more and more people are popping up because they're seeing that, okay, like, people actually want to hear about this. Like maybe a few years ago, not that
Yeah.
I was looking at it as much, so I can't
Yes.
accurately say, but there's like this, I feel like there's this
Mm.
growth of more people coming on because you'll see so many more YouTubers with smaller subscriber counts, and they're just kind of popping up more and more, which is great because then we're building this community, we're getting more people into the art, and then we're inspiring other people. And then also, these older authors who didn't grow up with social media, like Stephen King was still writing, back when telegrams were still around. I was listening to one of his interviews, and he would
Yeah.
send telegrams for the
How
longest
awesome.
time. Like people at some point, I think, told him like, dude,
Wow.
you have to stop sending these. Like no one literally uses this technology anymore. Like the guy was just not up to the
Mm.
idea of using a telephone or something. Like, so I think in that sense, like before, we didn't even really know who writers were unless you were in the community, and the community was very much like going to
Yeah.
cafes, like cafe culture. I was in Prague about a
Yeah.
month ago, and they have a very famous
Wow.
cafe there where Franz Kafka used to hang out with Max Brod, and Einstein used to go there, and
Wow.
that's like where all
Mm-hmm.
the writers used to hang out, and that's kind of how you knew where anybody was. There's a cafe here in Belgrade, that's where I am right now, where Ivo Andrić used to go
Mm-hmm.
to, that's now turned into a restaurant, and
Wow.
that's kind of like how the community
Mm.
was. It's just like you had to be in the city, kind of join the community, and then you would, be there with the other
True.
writers. And I'm kind of like, okay, I would love that. I would love to have like a cafe spot to hang out with people, and we just sit and write and like discuss literature
God.
and science and art. Like how do I make that happen? So maybe one day in the future, like an in-person meetup or something. But I think,
Yeah.
yeah, social media is exposing us to a lot more creatives. It's giving space for that,
Yep.
and it's allowing us to
Yep.
connect internationally, which is phenomenal. But yeah, as for reading, I mean, everyone that when I tell people I write, they're like, wow, that's so cool. But then, some of the older people that I talk to, like my parents, some family friends' parents, like even my priest at my
Mm.
church, bless him, I love him, But they're like, people don't really read anymore, like nobody reads books, and I'm like, people read
Yeah.
books, like I don't know what you guys are talking about. Maybe you guys
Definitely.
don't read books, but
Sure.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
There's a very common thought
Yeah,
process
resurgence.
that people just don't read books, or communities like the self-development community, they're like, read books, but only read self-help books and self-development books. Like I've heard
Yeah.
YouTubers be like, no, don't read Shakespeare, like don't read that nonsense. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Books and literacy are known to improve empathy. There obviously are verbal capabilities, our writing capabilities, storytelling. And then you hear like
Mm.
personal branding, and everyone's like, you need to be able to tell a story. You want your brand to tell a story. And I'm like,
Yeah, for
guys, the
sure.
best way you're going to be able to see that is from people who write books for a living and literally create an entire story out of thin air. You're
Yeah.
writing a story about yourself as a brand, like you know yourself. I'm like, imagine writing a story out of literal thin air, out of like neural connections
Yeah.
just firing off at one of another. And I'm like, and so when I hear people say, oh yeah, nobody reads, you don't want to read fiction books, those are useless. I'm like, I want to rip my hair out. I'm like, guys, you're missing out on so much
Literally.
gold. But maybe we can convince the people to read fiction again.
Yes, fiction.
So
It's like a
it's what I'm hoping for
revolution.
anyway.
For
Get
sure.
people
Yeah,
reading again.
stories. Literally. Yeah, because I know you hear like all on TikTok, like the whole like resurgence of like books being trendy to read. But it's all like the Colleen Hoover books or the I don't know, they're interesting. Like yeah, how you're saying about Shakespeare or the classics, like Lord of the Rings. Like those sorts of books are also important, and I feel like you can see how they stand through time. And like people who write books now are gonna stand through time eventually, because that's how storytelling works. You know? Yeah, I agree with you totally.
Yeah,
Mm.
well, and books to me, they're depending, a lot of books are written in regards to or in response to like the political structure of the time. A lot of Russian
Yeah.
authors wrote about what was going on during the Soviet Union and, the fall kind of the SARS and stuff. And
Mm.
so it's like it's a very good way of kind of getting an idea of what's happening at the time. One of my books that I want to write is, it's my nano project right now actually, is I'm like looking at stuff that's happening right now in the world, and I'm like, oh, if I were to just
Mm.
push that out, like let's say a couple hundred years maybe, like what could the world look like? And if anybody reads that,
Yeah.
they might be able to pull out that it's kind of like a social commentary on what's happening right now.
For sure.
So it's really interesting.
Mm.
I think it's really interesting to read those kinds of books, and you kind of get it's like you get a better idea of what was happening at the time historically as well.
Yeah. And you do that through storytelling. Like I
But
remember as you were saying that, sorry, just like The Great Gatsby and how that I guess tells a story of the time and like the social constructs and everything. And I'm like, I remember reading that book and it was so hard to get through, even though it's so short. But I've realized, like, yeah, the reason why we were writing that essay and like doing all this like analyzing is, yeah, exactly what you said. Through fiction, even if it's a story, it represents so much more, and it represents, time. I totally agree with you. That's so great.
and well, since we're kind of on like the representing history and our little slice of time that we've been given, I would love to ask you some questions about what's going on right now, especially in Australia. Watching Australia, I was in Canada at the time because I'm actually from Canada, and I was like, what the hell is going
I
on
never go to
over
Canada.
there? I Canada's nice.
Australia.
Government's not great right now, but Canada's
Yeah?
pretty nice. Yeah, I don't know. I
I
have
really
lots
want
of
to go to
thoughts on
Canada.
on our government currently, but I'm curious about how things are in Australia right now. I was reading an article. about how your guys' chief health officer or official is already saying, like, guys, keep getting your boosters. There's going to be another variant of COVID coming out. So I'm curious, like, how are
Yeah.
the Australian people thinking right now? Are they like, nah, we're over this, or get your boosters? Like, how are
I
you
honestly
feeling as an
don't.
Australian right now?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, very good question. I'm not. Well, I think with the whole idea of the resurgence of like COVID, I feel like a lot of Australians are over it. It's interesting how separated we are from the rest of the world, yet we're like experiencing the same sort of things, but different things at the same time. And of course, like in the last couple years, Australia has gone through a lot of different ridiculous like crises. Um, and as an Australian citizen, as I can say, um, I think people, I think they're a lot more fearful. Um, Obviously, we put a lot of trust in our leaders and our like the people we put into power and everything. And but I think there's still a fear and an increasing fear in how they will organize things. And I know there's lots of mixed feelings, and I feel like there's a lot of people who are just not neutral anymore in regards to like I don't know just beliefs about specific topics. It's all sort of your left or right. I honestly am always probably neutral. And I think also with the youth in Australia has dramatically changed, I feel. And I know it's interesting because I obviously haven't lived very long to see that change. But I think the political views and sort of ideas about the current state of the world and like the booster shots and like whatever's going on right now, it's mixed. It's mixed because of the age gap between generations. And I think that's interesting because I feel like as soon as people just get like it's terrible to say, but like as the old people die and the new people are brought up, it's going to be completely different. And I feel like we are going to sort of come to a neutral sort of standing point in a lot of political fields and like ideas, and just like things will become normal instead of being two sides of like two two sides of the same coin. It will just be not really one side, but just like I don't know where I was going with that analogy, but I don't know. Do you kind of know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what I just said, but that's how I feel.
I think what you're trying to say kind of is like, it's kind of like in America and even in Canada and a lot of the world right now. You've got people far left, you've got people far right.
Yes.
They've both veered on the political spectrum. It was like, you've got the five of them. You've got, what is it, fascism,
Yeah.
conservatism, liberalism,
Yeah.
socialism, communism. The left is like, we're going way communist. The rights are like, we're going very fascist over here. And it's like this divide has
Yes.
just
Yes.
grown. And so I think what you're trying to
Yeah.
say is like,
Yeah.
we're gonna kind of bring it back, like kind of rein it back into where it's not as extreme, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope,
Yeah. For sure.
because I I think of myself as kind of like center to center right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Mm.
sometimes the way the left is going with a lot of issues, I'm like, I'm gonna become
I
a
see.
fascist soon. Like if they keep pulling
I
things
know,
that way,
right?
like I'm not
I
gonna be
totally
even
agree with
like
you there,
center right
honestly.
anymore. I'm like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like
you're just
I'm
gonna have to
not
go
gonna
all the
be able
way.
to say right, like center right, because like the values of the left have just like pulled it that way, or like the values. I'm just like,
Yeah,
I don't know, but I'm changing too. Like I
yeah,
how I thought at 18, like when I was your age, very different to
hmm,
how I think now. I think my faith has a role to play with that, and
yeah,
just growing up, like you kind of realize that like certain things as a younger person, as a teenager still. I look back at myself at 18 and I'm like, oi, why would you do that? That was so stupid. And maybe I'll look back at myself when I'm 20, when I'm 30, I'll look at myself now at
yeah,
25 and I'll still be like, that was so stupid. Why did you do that? But you learn, you grow, and then
hmm,
you get better. But I think with
yeah.
the
Totally
extremism
agree.
in Australia, as as well is there was there's a statistic. I have one statistic, which is great. And there's apparently an 86% drop in working tourists in Australia, like people wanting to come to Australia to work. So I find that interesting because
Mm.
I actually was supposed to go to the University of Brisbane. I got in to do my master's there in molecular biology.
Wow.
And then I decided not to go because of what the government was doing. Like there was some other factors. There was obviously the
Yeah.
cost. It would have cost me so much money. I didn't know if the
Oh,
return on investment was
yeah.
worth it. But a big portion was
Mm-hmm.
the government. Novak Djokovic,
Mm-hmm.
he's a Serbian tennis player, one of the best ones in the world. Like I don't know if you saw that with he didn't want to get vaccinated, and so they shoved him in this like awful hotel,
Yes.
and he was there
Yes,
for
I
like
heard
two
about
weeks,
that.
and then yeah, and they kicked him out. And obviously for us
Yeah.
Serbian people, like that was like it was like a slap in the face to all of us. But I was thinking at it more logically as well, and I'm like, this guy is one of the most famous people in the world, probably one of the best athletes in the world, most well known in the world, one of them. Like he's up there, and
Mm-hmm.
this government is treating this him like this. How are they going to treat me, this
Yeah.
random Canadian that literally is nobody, like realistically speaking? Like I definitely am not at a Novak Djokovic world known level. What are they going to do to me? Like they're going to be able to shove me in some good camp. They're going to be able to deport me like with no questions asked. Like and so I actually was thinking to myself, like I really don't think it's worth it to go to Australia because of that. I didn't want to take
Mm-hmm.
that risk. So I like what are your thoughts on that, or have you heard anything from other, maybe you know some foreigners there, like how's that even impacting the economy? How are things going over there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting question. It's kind of, yeah, interesting because I do have a lot of international friends. Um, and I think being, I study international relations, and it's interesting hearing everything that we're kind of learning about at the moment, but also even more interesting seeing how much people don't really know or don't really, I don't know, have the time or the energy to kind of consume and, yeah, look out to the news, different articles. And it's interesting because you're kind of, dedicated, kind of like a nerd if you listen to the news these days. And of course, a lot of, I guess, youth people do get their news from TikTok or there's of course a multitude of problems with that. But in regards to, yeah, that case you were talking about, it is definitely scary how much government has on normal people's lives. And for particular cases, I think sometimes Australian, yeah, they just get a really bad rep. And honestly, it can't be helped sometimes. I definitely disagreed with that, and I thought they treated yeah, that athlete extremely terribly. Um, and yeah, how you were saying how you would be treated. It's obviously not a good sort of, yeah, representation of Australia when we do make those decisions and when those things do come to pass. And I think particularly when you were talking about, yeah, that case, I definitely resonated with the idea of, like, the refugees and how Australia's sort of hostility towards, yes, sending the boats back, even though that was a long time ago. I feel like that sort of stigma is still present. And again, as I was saying about the generational sort of gap and the extremists and how different it is from the youth to the old people. It's the old people who are in power. It's the old people who are making the decisions, and that aren't really empathizing with a lot of people's lives on a daily sort of normal daily level. In regards to, sorry, I keep going off track, but the international students, my friends, I think they picked Australia to kind of travel to because honestly, I find Australia extremely boring. I don't like, I mean, like, I'm an Australian. I've been here my whole life. Of course, I'm a bit bored of it, and I would love to travel to Europe, literally anywhere else off this island. And then I always ask them whenever I make a new friend, I'm like, why would you pick Australia? Or like, why did you pick Australia? And I think it is, I don't know, it's safeness in a way. A lot of parts of the world, it's just like a sort of geopolitical sort of thing where Australia is so secluded and like away from a lot of different conflicts and a lot of just like the countries that are in power and all like the superpowers. Um, but I still agree with you. It's not that we are secluded, even though we are physically. In yeah, in terms of government and our policies and our representation to the whole world, it's still very much in the mix. um, and of course, government sometimes makes bad decisions. And again, yeah, I think it's just the oldies are in power, and we just gotta wait for them to knock off. It's a terrible way to think, but honestly, that's what I feel. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know how else to kind of say how my friends or like international people feel about that because I am not an international student. I've been here my whole life. Of course, I have different problems with the Australian government, but that's going to look very different to a foreigner. And I guess, yeah, Australia does have a representation for a lot of cultural diversity, but that does not necessarily mean that it was an easy way to get there. And I think people are still facing bad like hostilities towards just like things in general when you're walking down a street and you're a different race or you're in a workplace, it's still very much there, and it's just a matter of time before I think Australia, I don't know, stops that sort of that sort of hostility. I'm not sure if that's a universal opinion. I guess that's just how I feel. It's still very much here, just the prejudice. And I just hope it gets rooted out someday. And I think that's, international. It's not just Australia, but at least, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Take what you will from my jumbled words.
Well, you mentioned that as a, you're not an international student, but as a citizen who's been there her whole life, you've still got some
Mm.
issues with the government. So I'm very curious to know what are you thinking? What is bugging you about the Australian government right now?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna turn into like a political debate. Um I think, do you know Anastasia Palaszczuk? Interesting, she has the same name as me. But a lot of people didn't like the way that she handled the COVID situation. Um, even though that was a few, like 2 years ago or like a year ago, um, I honestly found that she handled it well. Also, then the new change of government. I'm not sure where I was going with Anastasia Palaszczuk, but I have some good things to say about Australian government too. I think she handle it well. Obviously, people think differently, and that's politics. That's where we are, baby.
Can you just
But
can you just go into what she did exactly? Because I'm not familiar with it, and there's gonna probably be some other people who don't know. So, like, what did she do that
yeah,
you think was a good way to handle it?
basically, yeah. The I don't know. I feel like Australians really like to go outside. So when we were uh dealing with lockdowns and this sort of it was very severe and quick, um, and people didn't like her for that because people had plans because people wanted to go overseas or no, overstate to like yes see their families, and the quick crackdown was just a shock to a lot of people, and she thought that everyone thought that she was doing it too soon, that like other people in other countries, other leaders, they were allowing a lot more flexibility. But I honestly think she did the right thing, being someone in power to kind of have that position to, put the safety of people at the top of her, like top of priority, her list. What am I saying? Yeah. And of course, a lot of people didn't like that because, it was very quick crackdown. Everyone was like, what? Why is she doing this? And the prolonged sort of period. I think she did it a few times and people were just getting fed up with the way that she was dealing it. But I think she at least did it well and she had the right sort of prospects in mind for that. I don't know like the dates or anything, but I just know that I don't know. That's how I feel.
That's fair. And then
Yeah.
you were mentioning this change in government. What happened with that?
We call him ScoMo. It's interesting. I've never really talked about politics. I try to talk about politics with my family, but that never goes well. And I actually was supposed to vote first time for like the new change in government, but I didn't put my application in time, so I'm doing it next year. And that's really sad because I really wanted to participate and vote. But we got a new change of government. ScoMo's out, who's Scott Morrison. A lot of people had mixed feelings with him. I also had very mixed feelings. He just loved the economy. Basically, he loved the economy, and I guess a lot of people liked that. A lot of people didn't like that. But we now have Albo, who's Albanese. I think he is interesting because you can't really love a politician, much less, I mean, you can hate politicians, but there's never going to be a perfect person. There's only just a better person for the job, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that sort of change of government, I think that kind of sizzled things down a little bit. And it's a good time for a change since there's not much crisis, at least, I mean, I know there is, but it's not as heightened and extreme as it used to be when other people, the old government. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like it's a good time for that. And I think I support, I don't know, it's hard to say because I'm like, what if I become a politician? Like, I know people are going to hate me, and it's definitely a hard job. All politicians get bad rep, and that's just the job, I guess. But yeah, I don't really know what to say. Yeah. I'm kind of scared to talk about lots of things, but at least that's your little lesson on Australian politics. I don't know too much about the nitty gritties. Still in my first year of IR, still understanding the government and how crazy it is and how stupid it is sometimes. But that's just politics. So great.
That's fair. It's not much better in Canada, actually. It's one of the reasons why I'm not there right now, that I don't want to go back. Also the weather, it's very cold where I'm from. It's one of the coldest places on earth every winter,
Yes, I've
and
heard.
I don't want to be there for that. So I'm just like, I'm hanging out in Europe instead, and it's a lot better for me in general. So much better for my writing as well, but
Yeah, of course.
I understand not liking your government, which is just a problem everywhere. I mean, the States, look at the States right now, it's kind of a gong show, but it's,
Yes, for sure.
I, I know that I was reading about I know New Zealand's a little bit, not Australia, but it's close enough. Jacinda Ardern was talking about, like, she's been talking a lot about censorship lately, and even though Elon just bought Twitter, she's still like, oh, we're going to tackle misinformation, disinformation. French government was also like, oh no, we don't want anybody talking about like Russian stuff, like no Russian media coming through on any channels. So I've been thinking about censorship a lot and like what that means. Like, and I'm thinking of it in terms of writing, because obviously there's a history of like banned books, and those books have been published, and they've, the people have tried to take them off the shelves, but at least they've been written. I'm worried about what's going to happen in the future. Like, let's say you want to publish a book, or I want to publish a book, and we can't even publish it because it'll be like, oh, well, you're talking about this topic, or you're criticizing the government, or you're criticizing some concept. Like, how do you feel about censorship? What are kind of, direction are you thinking it might be going? How can that affect, other artworks, like writing, even just making art? Like, you might make a painting and someone's gonna be like, nope, you can't put this in a gallery. Like, any thoughts on that?
That's, well, you are so good. Well, you have like a third eye as well. Like, you look, wow, that's a great question. Yes, censorship is a big problem in today, and I definitely agree with the whole thing about art and how it can take on very specific perspectives. And I think definitely there will come a time where everyone is oversensitive. Is that a word? Sensitized? Oversensitive?
Overly
About
sensitive.
very specific, overly sensitive about topics. And there will come a time where there's a very fine line between like freedom of speech and sort of, I don't know how to explain it, like a overstepping of people's rights. Um, and yeah, you have to be very careful about what you say even now about particular, political topics, or yeah, about code, about like different societies and different sorts of areas of it's all politics, my goodness. And it's interesting, yeah, how politics will soon delve into art, and I think it already has, like from ages ago, but it's just, yeah, the idea of censoring that and how that will intrude on people's rights to express what they feel. um and how art can, yeah, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It's so, it's such a great question, but it's so hard for me to answer. But I totally think that there will come a time where everything is just going to be so hard, because as you said, you might not be able to even publish a book because you say this or you do this, and people, of course, authors get a lot of shame and a lot of heated debate and shade, is that the word I'm trying to say? Yeah, about particular portrayals of different races, for example, or something like that. And of course, it's important for self-respect, but yeah, it's interesting how that will come into, yeah, cross again, yeah, freedom of speech, and I guess the way that you want to tell your story, and also the crossover between fiction and like nonfiction, and what it says about the world. Because I remember you talking about how, yeah, history can be shown through fiction and stories, and how maybe you talking about a certain topic will just, yeah, I don't know, delete you from um, opportunities to be published and to say what you want to say. But I don't know. But what do you think about that? I feel like you would have a lot of a better sort of coherent idea about. I literally can't answer for my life. I'm sorry, but yeah,
No, no, nothing to be sorry about. I want to hear the this. I like hearing the stream of consciousness, so it's
it's
totally
a
fine.
model thing up here. This girl is crazy. She can't think. She just jumps, jumps, jumps. But please tell me. I want to hear about
No,
what
it's
you
good.
think.
I am definitely anti censorship. I
Mm-hmm.
I especially online. The online world is not one that I think can be or should be governed, because again, every country physically has different rules, regulations on how they think that we should do something. The internet, you can't really, governments can try to block the internet and they do so, but now there's even ways around that, and I think it's just
Yeah.
at the point where you can't govern it. You can, maybe you can take pieces of evidence into a court of law, obviously in let's say like human trafficking cases, and they track people who
Mm-hmm.
are selling victims, like, yeah, okay, definitely you can use that and use it to form an argument. But to shut down parts of the internet, again, that's all very subjective. Like, I know the Canadian government is trying to pass a bill, or they were, this like kind of like a government censorship as well, and they were trying to make it so that the algorithm would show Canadian content creators, and it would boost them up above everybody else. And not only that, anyone who
Oh.
wanted to have their content shown, they had to have like an X percentage of
Mm.
Canadian, like members on that project. So it's just like all these Canadian content
What?
creators that have large followings were like, no, this is gonna impact us really poorly,
Mm.
because if someone doesn't want to
Yeah.
watch Canadian content, you can't force it on them. Like, we want to
Mm.
grow
Mm.
organically. We have followings in
Yeah.
other countries. Like, we've managed to
Yeah.
grow successfully without government interference.
Mm.
But then
Mm.
for me, it's also just a big problem of like, somebody out there is going to just decide arbitrarily, as they're already doing, that this ideology is right, this ideology is wrong. And
Yeah.
if you don't agree with that, you're off. Like, I mean, Twitter, they booted off Donald Trump. Like, how do you boot off
Mm.
how do you ban the president of the United States? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, you can't, I don't think you can do that. That's just like saying, okay, Donald Trump, you're no longer allowed to give any press conferences.
Mm.
He's the president of the country. Like, okay, I don't agree with that. And I know there's this, people say like, oh well, hate speech. My problem with that as well is that basically anything is hate speech now. Like with like you said, people are so overly sensitive. Someone will say, I think that people need to eat a good diet and exercise, and that it is not healthy to be 200 pounds. And
Mm.
someone out there on TikTok is telling you that it's fat phobic and that you're
Yeah.
a bigot and that you're an awful human being because you're telling someone how to be healthy. And apparently that's, now insulting and could be qualified as hate speech. Is
Mm.
it though? It wasn't hate speech 5 years ago. It's not hate speech in the medical textbooks that people, learn to become
Yeah.
doctors,
Yeah.
when they're telling you that, oh yeah, when you have all this extra fat and you're more prone to strokes and heart attacks and diabetes and reduced mobility, like it's just the line there is also just being pushed to the point where you can't say anything. So I'm very anti, like I think I border on the, just, you can just say whatever you want. Like the market will decide what gets pushed and what doesn't. I mean, obviously, again, it's very hard. Like it's, the bad ideas have been pushed, but that was very through authoritarian regimes. But if I'm some random person on YouTube who's like, I think that you're stupid or X people are stupid, like realistically, no one's gonna, like, if I don't have a following or anything, no one's gonna care. Like who am I seriously gonna end up hurting with that comment? Like that's kind of where I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I guess if the president were to say, X people are all stupid and lazy, that, yes, that would be a problem. But you are in a role that requires you to have more finesse, to be more professional. But again, if I'm just shit posting on Twitter, like that's all
Yeah.
realistically not going to do anything to anyone. Like, let's be real. So the fact that there's going to be these social justice warriors who are like, you're not allowed to say that, how dare you, you're
Yeah.
a fat phobic bigot, the homophobe, like whatever other phobe that there is to be at this point, like it's not um
Yeah.
constructive in any way, I
I
don't think.
see what you mean. Mm. Mm.
But this is where I'm very conservative in that sense. I'm just like, not safe, just
Yeah,
let.
I kind of understand where you're coming from, and there are elements of like what you said that I totally agree with. Um, yeah, and just like people are not thinking logically anymore, and yeah, everything is racist, everything is transphobic, everything, yes, is like a yeah. Everyone's overly sensitized, and it's interesting where people draw the line of you. Yeah, I'm just saying what I want to say, and like, no, you're actually hurting people. Um, Interesting to think about, and I think about that actually a lot. Yeah,
I'd love to
it's
hear
kind of
more
scary
of
to
your
think about
thoughts.
that. Oh, I'm kind of scared. I don't know. There's lots of things. Have you watched the documentary? It's kind of a docu about I think it's called "What Is a Woman."
Oh, by Matt
Um,
Walsh.
yeah,
I haven't
I
I
think so.
haven't
Yeah.
watched it, but I've seen the clips on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've had a lot of people have seen the clips and just like it's very interesting. Um, and I honestly find myself being, I don't know if I could say like a culprit or like a victim maybe of sort of what he talks about. It's interesting because I thought it was all going to be like about what is a woman, as in what is a woman against a man, but it was more
Hmm.
so about trans people, um, and I guess their representation and like progression. And something that I definitely took from that is the influence of media in, shaping people's ideas. Basically, the sort of, I don't know, it's not really spoiling, but it's just kind of like my outtaking from that is it was showing how oversensitized people are and how also vulnerable, especially young people are on these sorts of apps such as TikTok, or
Hmm.
Instagram, and how people can normalize things by just like posting about it. And how people, it's interesting how, yeah, these, especially how media really influences our mind and therefore our political beliefs and like outlooks and perspectives. But yeah, the whole idea about people not feeling right in their own body. And of course, I'm still very much thinking about what is right, what is wrong. But it was interesting how I took from that documentary about how people who started as allies, you know, of the community on TikTok soon became like, yeah, trans, or like part of the queer community and stuff like that. How they started as someone who's like, yeah, I support you, you're cool, but someone who gets progressively invested and because of their vulnerability starts to believe things that necessarily wouldn't be true unless that idea was planted in their minds through this sort of media and through these people who are posting about it. So there was like a girl who, yeah, started as an ally, and then as she started to get into it, she thought, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm actually not in the right body, or something like that. And I guess I feel like that idea was not organic. That idea came from external people who are just kind of shoving things down her throat, in a way that kind of like breeds this idea that you're not okay, that you're not, that you're different, that you have to change who you are, change your pronouns or whatever you want to do. And how that kind of comes into play with, yeah, how media really influences the way that we feel and the things that we just like, yeah, the way we feel. Because for example, like you see there's so many TikToks, for example, about like just trauma and trauma dumping, and how people are in the comments are like, yeah, I feel that, like, yeah, that's normal, and they laugh about it, and that just becomes normalized, you know. And I think the normalization and increased sort of sensitivity towards certain topics is all done through the media and through the things that we ingest consistently day by day. And it's the people, as you said, about like influencers who are in power, who have that say, sort of thing. I don't know. It's interesting. But I guess that's kind of what I took from the documentary. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about that. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm definitely more in the same boat as you, in the sense that I think if you're constantly bombarded with a message, you start to believe it. It's
Yeah.
propaganda, right? It happened in
Yeah,
Nazi
for sure.
Germany when, Hitler was saying that the Jews are bad, Jews are bad, we need to get rid of them. It happened. I mean, it happens literally everywhere. And so, if you're going on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, and you get sucked into a community that's like, no, actually, if you like wearing baggy
Yeah.
clothes as a girl, that means that you are uncomfortable with your body because you don't like showing your curves, so you have to chop your breasts off. That is a very radical jump
Yeah.
from, hey, my personal style is like, I just like to wear pants versus a skirt, to, we're gonna go to bodily mutilation.
Mm.
And it's I don't understand this either. I'm so confused with this. This group, this particular group of people, they argue for stuff like we shouldn't gender toys and colors. Like, boys can play with Barbies, girls can play with race cars, girls can wear blue, boys can wear pink. But then you have a little kid, like a little girl who likes blue and wants to play with race cars, and they're like, she's transgender because
Yeah.
now he likes to play with race cars, and so he's now a boy. And you're like, wait, but you're the same group that's
Right.
saying we don't want to gender toys, but now
Yeah.
you're trying to change the gender of a child based
Yeah.
on the toys
Yeah.
that they're playing with, and because they like so I'm that's like, it's just so many logical fallacies in their
Frustrating.
arguments. And they also just don't, like, you try and point this out and they have so much cognitive dissonance that they just don't want to accept that that doesn't make any sense, or that maybe they're taking this too far. And again, this happens on the right as well, and we're just talking about this particular group. But that's been my problem with a lot of it, is
Yeah.
they absorb an idea, and then it just seems to become so conflated and grown and grown and grown and grown, and then you just end up it's like the on TikTok too. They've got it's been studies shown about this in the States, like girls especially. It'll be like those people who pretend to have the different alters, like the personalities, like they've got multiple personality disorder, and
Yeah.
they'll do this is me, I'm
Yeah.
Tiana, and then they'll do like a cut, and it'll be like, this is me, I'm Rob, I do, and then it's just like, it's not even true, they're faking it because that's not how DID works.
Yeah.
But then girls, especially watching these TikToks, they started to emulate these same characteristics even though they never had before, like tics and
Yeah.
Tourette's, like let's say like the head ugh, can't think of the word, but like ticking, like these sporadic
Yeah.
movements. These girls especially started copying so many of these body movements that they'd never had before, and they went to the doctors and they're like, you've got this like random onset of Tourette's that literally should have been diagnosed as, so it's created a lot of problems in that sense
For
as
sure.
well.
For sure.
And
Wow.
that's where you can kind of like jump back into censorship, like, oh, we should hide the kids from this as well. And
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
I really don't know, like, I just, my response to that is monitor what your kids have access to on the internet. Like if you've got young children, like definitely put some monitoring into place, because they should not be
Yes.
able to access everything on the internet as
Yeah.
impressionable children and teenagers, even like young
Yeah.
teenagers. But it's big problems, I feel.
I honestly think you would really love What is a Woman? I think you should watch it. It's so interesting because he starts off very neutral and he just listens and asks the normal questions. But then at the end, he gets extremely passionate. And it's interesting seeing, yeah, how he starts to argue back off simply like logic, and how they end up getting speechless. But I'll let you watch that. But it's so interesting, yeah, seeing how media plays such a huge freaking role in the way that we think day in, day out. And it's just like, I always imagine what it would be like if we didn't have this, if we didn't have, all this bombardment of consistent, persistent sort of voices in our head. Yeah, just telling us what to do, who we are, and how we feel, when it's not organic. What's the opposite of organic? It's like
Inorganic.
it's inorganic
or
yeah.
artificial.
Artificial. Yes. And it's just like, yeah, people, like, especially also mental illness and how that's been normalized. Of course, there's lots of different contributors to people's mental illness, but I feel like everyone's depressed nowadays. Or is it just me? I feel like everyone is showing very big signs of depression, which back in the day you would be like, oh my goodness, are you okay? But now it's like, I want to die too. You know what I mean? Like
It's a personality trait.
Yeah. And like that's just being normalized. And I feel like maybe the media definitely played a role in that. And also, I guess, our usage of simply phones and digital devices and how that impacts our interaction between people. But yeah, there's so many things. Like the media, like I love it. I can like post on there. I can like reach people and chat to beautiful people like you. But like sometimes I think looking at the bigger picture, it's interesting to see what actually comes into how do you say it?
Fruition.
Fruition. Yes. I'm very bad. I see it in my mind. I'm just like, I just gotta say it. Anna, say it, but I can't say it. But yeah. But that's, yeah, I guess how I feel. So cool.
It's interesting, in the documentary, I know the clip, he showed that clip of the African tribe, and he was asking the questions like, oh, do you think that there's what if someone's non-binary or whatever, and they're all just like laughing at him or looking like at him like he's crazy. And I watched his reactions to the people reacting to the clips, and people were saying like, you found the one transphobic tribe in Africa. And back in end of April, I went to the Amazon in Peru, the Amazon jungle, and I stayed at this little lodge. Like it's made for tourists, but this is like deep in the jungle where they don't have like they have a generator for electricity where the lights work for 4 hours out of the day, and so there's no there's no service, there's really nothing. And obviously completely separated from the Maasai tribe in Africa, but the gender roles there, for example, like it was rainy season, and so there was water up in front of the lodge. It was up to hip height. So when we parked our boat, we literally walked off the boat, and we were like, what the hell is happening? And there was two guys. One of them was a young guy. He was 18 actually, and his uncle, I think, so a bit older. They were building a ramp for us. They're just standing hip deep in water, building a ramp of like wooden planks for us to walk across, because they know we've got our stuff and everything. We're guests. They're not going to make us wade through hip deep water to get to the lodge. But it's the men that are doing this, whereas the women that were there, they were taking care of their kids, and they were cooking in the kitchen and doing the laundry. So you would see like one of the women, she'd be hanging up the laundry to dry. You'd see the men would be working around the lodge. They'd be taking care of stuff. They'd be, I think everyone cleaned in general, because there's so many things to clean. But this is like a completely isolated group of people. These people grew up in the literal jungle, and they've got those established gender roles. Like they do exactly like what anybody else does. I mean, they all spoke Spanish, so I couldn't even like ask them kind of what they thought about this sort of topic, and I don't speak any Spanish, like barely any. So but it was just something I noticed. Like you see these, you're not even talking to these people, and you can these gender roles are these traditional gender roles are present. So when people argue that the tribe is transphobic because it's an innate thing, they just don't believe in it, blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, well, you've got a completely different set of people on the other side of the world that are believing in that same concept. So it's I don't know if I don't believe that necessarily that it's totally innate, because I'm like, your 4-year-olds can't even tell you how old they are accurately. I've seen TikToks of that where it's like a mom will ask her kid like, how old are you? They'll be like, I'm 6, and the kid's actually 4. She'll be like, no, you're 4 years old, but she's trying to tell us that her son's a girl and that he's arguing that he can say that he's a girl, and it's just like, no, that doesn't no. So a lot of problems in the philosophy there.
I think also you would find interesting about the sort of I think you'll probably see it in the documentary, but I think I learn a lot from that. But it's just like also the where it kind of started and how it was based on like these experiments that were just immoral. But I don't know. I wish I can remember more about it, but I just remember it was not good, and just like the whole basis of yeah. I'll let you watch it, but it's very interesting just to think about. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll definitely keep that. I was wondering, I was like, should I get a Daily Wire membership for this to watch the documentary? So I watched like all the clips that I could. Yeah. But I actually watched one of theirs for free. They had a free documentary on that. They made it free for like a 7-day period or something on abortion, actually. And it was my first viewing of theirs, of like their full length production rather than just their clips, because I'm not a member.
Right.
And it was very well done, very professional. I really liked it, and it's just I like what they're doing. I followed the guys, Michael, Ben, Matt, so it's I am like, okay, now you're convincing me. I'm like, I should definitely at least get the membership.
Get like a free trial or something.
Free trial to watch the thing. Yeah. Sure. I think they're bringing in a voice that needs to be heard, because we've been hearing really only one side of the argument. We need to have that other side come in and hopefully eventually meet somewhere in the middle, kind of go back to a more more normal stance.
Because I think it was interesting also, because I think Max is a Christian, if I believe, but he did not go to any priest. He didn't take any sort of perspective from the Bible to his argument, which I found was very interesting. And that's why I was like, oh, where's the Christian perspective? But it's like, you don't even need it. You can just, argue, I guess, like with logic. But yeah, I definitely, I'd like to give, a lot of his other works a try. But he's very passionate. He's very passionate. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, like, quiet your voice, like, be respectful. But yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. He's got that personality, which again, yeah, I think it's necessary, and you've got other people who can make the same argument in a
Oh, for sure,
more
yeah.
more gentle way. But I guess kind of
Yeah.
he's one of those louder voices to kind of combat the loud voices on the
Yeah.
other side. So we need both. We need all the people.
For
We got
sure. For sure.
So it's definitely an interesting time. And it's just to go back to writing quickly, when people are like, oh, well, where can we get ideas from our books for our books, like I know you've got some comments on that on your stuff. I see it on other people's YouTube videos all the time, and I don't know, maybe because this is just how I think about it. I'm like, look at the world, like how do you just like not see something and you're like,
And just like
man,
want to write about it.
this is so
Yeah.
messed up, or like this is so amazing,
Yeah.
I want to make a whole story out of it. Like that's even Stephen King said that in the same
Yeah.
interview that I mentioned. He was literally like, read a newspaper, go outside, um, talk to other people, and you'll
Yeah.
get this seed of an idea, and it'll grow and grow
Yeah.
and grow and grow, and then you just flesh it out, characters come, settings, whatever, and then you just kind of, you put it all together in a first draft, and then second draft you pretend like you knew what you were doing the entire time. There's that one quote. So I'm
Yeah.
that's literally how I write. Like I just
True.
see these
That's so
things.
interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see these things. I look back at my history of my people, like Serbians and stuff, and like our history, and then things that are going on
Mm-hmm.
today, and I'm like, and I sit there for a second, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
I could, if I took all of this, boom, magic. Like you
know.
just, so it's just like, that's the only way I know how to come up with novel ideas, is literally just interacting
Yeah.
with the world, forming a perspective, and writing a story about it.
That's amazing. Yeah. There's lots of things to write about, man. Totally agree.
But Anna, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Right Opinion podcast. I love
Thank you
talking
so
with
much,
you,
Tiana.
and we've had such a good conversation. And I would just want to say to everyone listening, definitely check out Anna's YouTube channel, check out her
Thank
Instagram.
you. Thank you so
Links
much.
will be down below. Is there anywhere else that people can find you if they're looking to learn more about you?
No, probably just my YouTube or Instagram. I also have a Discord server that I've created for writers. If you want to just it's so great because I just pop on sometimes and people are just chatting to each other and around the world, and it's so great. So I don't know, find me Discord. It should be on my YouTube in one of my descriptions, I'm sure. So yeah.
Perfect. We will put everything in the show notes, and thank you so much again for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.